guys, today we'll be remaking this scene from Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, completely free on Blender and DaVinci Resolve. So if you're ready, let's get started and jump in. For this render, I decided not to model or texture the character, in this case Luke, because there's a way to get really high quality 3D models of Star Wars characters for free through Battlefront 2. I was lucky enough to get Battlefront 2 for free when it was on sale on the Epic Games Store, so now I'm able to access all the models and textures used in the game. To do this, download the Frosty editor and then open it up and export the models and textures you need to a folder. If you don't have Battlefront 2, there's still websites online where you can download the same models and textures for free. With the reference and Luke Skywalker model now in my scene, I got to work on the Lars homestead. I added in a sphere and deleted the bottom half and then joined it with a cylinder. I then extruded out some faces and it was done. This scene didn't require very complex modelling. It mostly involved me just adding in cylinders and cubes and then extruding out some of their faces or adding loop cuts to them. Once the objects were modelled, I subdivided the ground plane and added 2 displace modifiers, each with a different scale noise texture. I then used a grab brush in sculpt mode to pull out some of the sand to create a few mini dunes. For the plants in the background, I just traced over them with a cube to get their general shape. I knew I didn't have to put that much effort into modelling them, as the texturing would do the heavy lifting. For the props around the scene, I just used the noise textures for their roughness and bump inputs to make them look more weathered. I then used another noise texture or Voronoi texture plugged into a colour ramp for the base colour. For the sand, I just used the exact same process. I then got to work texturing Luke with the textures I exported from Battlefront 2. However, this proved to be trickier than just connecting the inputs. The base colour texture was intuitive to add, but for the roughness, it was a little bit more tricky. I had to use a separate colour node to separate the blue channel from the red and green channels of the normal map. I then plugged the blue channel into an invert node and plugged that into the roughness. For the normal input, I took the red and green channels that were left over, combined them in a combined colour node, and put that into an invert node, which then went into a normal map node. I then used a mix RGB node to make his clothes dirtier and more brown. I then joined all the separate parts of Luke together and uploaded him to Mixamo, and then re-downloaded him and fixed some of the weights. Then I recorded a video of myself doing the same movement that Luke did and uploaded it to Flask.ai. I extracted the movement from that video and put it onto Luke. When I downloaded Luke in the animation though, his arms had rotated too much, so I went into the graph editor and selected the x-axis of each arm and moved all the keyframes down, so his arm would do the same movement, just offset at a different rotation. I repeated this process of adjusting the rotation of different bones in the armature to make it more accurate to the reference, with every other bone. I also turned on proportional editing to make some of the movements smoother. This process took about an hour, but it was worth it to get a clean result. Next, I got to simulating the cloth. However, in the model I exported from Battlefront 2, Luke didn't actually have a body for the cloth to collide with, so I instead used the weights on the cloth from Mixamo to drive the movement of the mesh and then added a cloth modifier on top of that. To control what would be affected by the cloth modifier and what wouldn't, I went into the weight paint mode and painted the areas that I wanted to be simulated with a weight of 0. I then used the weight paint group to drive the stiffness property in the cloth physics section. I added in a wind force to give the cloth some more movement, and then refined the simulation till I got one that I was happy with. Settings I used in the end were quality steps of 6, vertex weight of 0.01 kg, stiffness settings of 5, except bending which was 0, and damping settings of 0. I then used a stiffness setting of 1 and collisions quality of 5, with collisions and self-collisions turned on and put to the minimum distance. I used the exact same settings to simulate the hair and made sure the weight paint group on the hair had no weights around the edges. After the cloth was simulated, the only thing left to simulate was the smoke. To do so, I used spheres as the inflow objects and added 2 wind forces and a turbulent force to push the smoke in the right direction and to give it some noise. In the end, I duplicated the smoke sim and moved it further back. For For the textures, I used the resolution divisions of... For the settings, I used the resolutions division of 128, timescale of 0.3, buoyancy and heat of 2, dissolve time of 100, set to slow, and the noise upres factor of 2, strength of 1.15, and scale of 8. To texture the smoke, I used a noise texture to control the density of a black principled volume shader. The scene is mostly done now, but it feels empty. To make it feel like there's more sand in the atmosphere, I added a volume scatter node of 0.002 density and a principal volume node of 0.005 with a yellow color, and then added in a cube with a noise texture plugged into a yellow emission shader to make it seem like there are sand particles in the air. To save on render time and allow for more control on how the smoke looks, I rendered it out as a separate layer. I set every other object apart from the smoke to have the holdout option selected, so it would appear transparent in the render. I did the same to the background. Once I had the smoke pass rendered out, I then combined it with the other images, and used the soft light option in DaVinci Resolve to remove the alpha. I then color corrected the footage to make it more desaturated like the original. And with that, I give you the final result. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed and liked. And if you have any suggestions for any other cinematic scenes I should make, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next one.